Good morning, everyone. Glad you're here. I want to call our August 14th Scott County Fiscal Court meeting to order. We are meeting here at the courthouse, and we have some of our members meeting via Zoom. And we're going to ask you to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance to start our meeting, and then we'll call the roll.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. This meeting's being streamed on our Scott County Fiscal Court YouTube channel, and that will be available for viewing as well after this meeting as well. And then public comment was made available via email. And Stacy, do we have any public comment that would need to be addressed that was emailed to you?
I had one email, but I don't think it's related to the
Okay.
agenda. I'll show it to you.
All right, very good. We'll address
The
that.
magistrates were copied in it. It was about broadband.
Okay, about broadband. Well, we're going to talk about broadband absolutely during this meeting, so that's very appropriate. With that said, I'm going to ask Stacy to please call the roll.
Mr. Hostetler?
Here.
Mr. Lyons?
Here.
Mr. Wallace?
Here.
Mr. Corman?
Present.
Mr. Ellison?
Here.
Mr. Burke?
Here.
Mr. Livingston?
Here.
Mr. Marshall?
Here.
Judge Covington?
Here. Well, thank you again for everyone being here. We do have a couple of guests that will be joining us via Zoom to discuss some broadband mapping and work that they do. And it's Paul Deming and Glenn Fishbein. So we'll be calling on them. Appreciate them being here with us as well. So at this time, I'd like to ask for consideration agenda item number 4 of our previous minutes as presented. Are there any questions or comments related to our minutes as presented?
I guess we
You want to
actually
do both of them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was the date of the?
The in July meeting and then the August 10th.
Okay. We will consider the July meeting minutes first. Any questions or comments related?
July 23rd minutes.
July 23rd. Thank you, Rick. Any questions or comments related to those minutes as presented?
Motion for approval.
A motion from Mr. Chad Wallace. Is there a second?
Second.
A second from Mr. Livingston. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much. The next item that we'll have to consider are the minutes from our special called meeting that was on Monday, August the 10th. August the 10th.
August 10th.
Making a motion from, are you making the motion, Mr. Hostetler, to approve those minutes?
Yes.
Yes. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Corman. Are there any questions or comments related to the minutes from August 10th? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. Motion passes to accept the minutes as presented. We will move down to bills and hand checks. No transfers to consider. Bills and hand checks as presented. Are there any questions or comments related to those documents? Is there a motion to accept as presented? Motion from Mr. Lyons to accept as presented. Is there a second?
Second. Okay.
Dwayne Ellison will second that motion. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Please let the record reflect item number 7, clerk's fees. Clerk's fees in the amount of $239,121.27 were presented to the court. Number 8, let sheriff's fees be of $36,755.51. Let that amount be reflected in the minutes that the sheriff submitted those as well. Number 9, Treasurer Settlement Report 2019-20. Please let the record reflect that the treasurer submitted that report. Are there any questions about that submission? That's a list of vendors, revenue sources, and totals. It was about 6 pages. It was shared with you. Any questions or comments? Michelle is not with us today. She is driving as we speak to Blacksburg, Virginia, to deliver her daughter to first-year freshman. So
She's crying.
she might be, and she's on the line, but she's muted, I think. All right. With that was reflected in the minutes that was submitted. Number 10 on our agenda, the McCracken Fund bank change. And our treasurer has requested that bank change because that fund has very, very little activity and no activity essentially. And if we leave it where it's at, it's going to realize a fee. Her recommendation is to move that to Whitaker.
Motion for approval.
Motion for approval from Mr. Chad Wallace. Is there a second? I see a second from Mr. David Livingston. Any other questions? All those in favor of that request, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. At this time, I'm going to ask, I'd like to go ahead and since we've got Michelle on here and we let Michelle off, I'm going to ask to consider the number 12 agenda, and we'll come back to broadband mapping right after this. That's okay. Ordinance 20-05, first reading budget amendment. And Rand's going to read this amendment, but it essentially impacts 3 funds. And we had to do this because of the CARES Act federal grant funding. The Department of Local Government requested that we create and amend our budget to create this grant fund, federal grant fund. And then there's 2 other items that are slightly adjusted, the LGEA and then the McCracken Fund as well. The LGEA is going to be adjusted just to assist in expenditures in the road department. With that said, Rand, would you read that information?
Yes, sir. Ordinance 20-05, an ordinance relating to the annual budget amendment thereof, whereas Scott County, Kentucky has realized unbudgeted receipts, be it ordained by Scott County of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, Section 1, current fiscal year 2021. Budget for the current fiscal year is amended to increase or decrease the receipts of the following funds to include unbudgeted receipts from, thank you, sir, revenues, federal fund, federal reimbursement CARES, $1,940,769. LGEA, surplus prior year $53,000. McCracken, surplus prior year $10. Federal fund cash transfer out to other funds, $1,940,000. General cash transfer in from other funds, $1,940,000. Total amended revenues, $1,993,779. Appropriations fund, LGEA, road materials, $53,000. Federal fund miscellaneous, $769. McCracken miscellaneous, $10. General reserves for transfer, $1,940,000. Total amended expenditures, $1,993,779. Section 2, the amounts adjusting the receipt and expenditure accounts in Section 1 are for governmental purposes. Approve this first reading today, assuming you August 14th, 2020.
What questions or comments does anyone have about the proposed budget amendment in this first reading? Does anyone care to make a motion to approve that request?
Motion to approve.
Motion from Mr. Corman. Is there a second? Second from Mr. Lyons. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much. Michelle, we're going to instruct you to tune off now and safely drive to Blacksburg. So be safe and best of luck to Riley. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
All right, with that said, we're going to get to, we've got Glenn Fishbein and Paul Deming of Geo Partners, and they're out of Minnesota, so they're calling from Minnesota right now. And, just to give an introduction, I watched a demo of their work a few months ago, conversations about, we all know that a priority for our court, I think, and one that I've talked about quite a bit, and I think you all share, is that we need to explore and look at avenues that we can to help expand access to broadband in rural Scott County. And a year ago, we did a little social media campaign just to get a general feel from the community about where we needed broadband, where we had poor broadband or no broadband. And I had over almost 600 responses to that social media campaign, and I have a spreadsheet with those responses still, and I have information with addresses and email addresses. But what Geo will do for us, and what they do is they do detailed mapping, and they have software that uses an enormous amount of data to create very accurate mapping of what's available and where it needs to be. And then they also can give you a very good estimate about the cost to provide connectivity to these areas that don't have good connectivity or no connectivity. And here's the issue. We know that we need better coverage out in the rural part of the community. And the thing that we've been fighting and why it's very difficult to get federal grant monies is because the FCC maps that they use are not accurate. And it is widely known, and it is, it's a huge issue. So what Geo does is they do a crowdsourced campaign and to assist the mapping, where they get people to do speed tests. And I'm going to let Glenn and Paul talk about this, but what the speed test does from a mobile device or a laptop or a desktop is it gives you real hard data that you can then take and use when you make an application for federal grants. It shows them, we're not just talking about it, well, we think we need more connectivity. We have data then that will show in a federal grant that we truly do need more connectivity. So Paul and Glenn, I'm going to let you all take over and address the court about what you all do, and then I'm excited about the news that you can also share about the cost. And then I'll also, after you all talk, we'll dovetail in. The court has already approved for us to apply for a grant that we applied with Bourbon County and Woodford County. They approved this, and we're really close to being able to move forward. We're waiting on Woodford County, their extension, to approve the participation. But once we get Woodford approved, then we can move forward. And what my understanding is that Bluegrass Ad will execute that with you all, and you all will do the actual work on that feasibility, the rapid design. So I'll let you all talk about both the crowdsourcing and then the mapping that you do as well. Go ahead, Paul or Glenn.
Hello, everyone. This is Paul Deming from Geo Partners. Judge Covington, thank you very much for the introduction. And thank you to everyone this morning for your time. We really appreciate the opportunity to participate this morning in the Scott County Fiscal Court meeting. This is the first time we've ever participated in something like this. We're currently a 3-person operation based in Minnesota. Glenn Fishbein is our Chief Technology Officer and the creator of the software, with considerable contribution from our Chief Operating Officer, Nancy DeGidio. Geo software has been under development since 2011, and it contains 40 billion data points, and we're certainly looking forward to adding additional data from Scott County to this total. We currently market our services to communities throughout rural America, and we also sell to ISPs who want to assess new market opportunities. Our coverage is the entire U.S. and Canada. We've recently launched our mapping capabilities in the state of Washington and the state of Minnesota. Those operations are going extremely well at this time. We like to say that we're the only broadband, that we provide the only broadband map in existence that is statistically valid. We provide a statistical confidence interval, and that is the key component to, as what Judge Covington talked about, this grant application. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Glenn Fishbein.
Thank you. Whoever is controlling the meeting, it'd be much easier to share my screen so you can see what we're talking about if possible. Currently, screen sharing has been disabled. So if somebody can manage that for me, please.
Where's this at?
Glenn, I'm gonna, we're in a tough spot because I can't operate the machine, so I've asked one of our staff people that really is not a tech expert. Karen Hankins she's operating the Zoom, and I don't know if she has the ability to share the screen. She's in my office. Oh, she's working on it. Karen downstairs. Karen, if you can go back to the back to your Zoom user screen, and David might come down there and try to help you, but it's down at the bottom. It says share screen. And I apologize, Glenn. She's working on it. I did not, and this is not Karen's fault. I didn't ask her to be prepared for this, so it's not her fault.
Not a problem.
I think we'll be able to get this fixed in just a second.
Yeah, you've got your screen shared correctly, and I guess you have to allow participant sharing. I'm not sure how to do that.
All right, I think we're working on it.
Okay, hold on. You don't have to keep me, Phil, just keep talking.
We're working on it. Well, the concern I have is that this is truly a picture's worth 1,000 words. And I could probably talk for about a week and not get all the information I can show you from the very first image. So let's just hang in here a moment and hope that she can find the correct button. Meanwhile, what I'm doing is I'm checking to see if she's got me enabled yet. And maybe one of the options on the very top of your screen, you see view options.
It's usually at the.
Yeah.
It's
This one is,
It's
for
you-
some reason, it's completely different than the one we use at work.
yeah, David. It's usually at the bottom of the. It's usually at the bottom of the toolbar on the Zoom, and it says it's a green. It says share screen.
Yeah, it's up at the top, and
Ah.
it says new share, and then
Hey,
The problem is it is sharing Karen's screen, not the attendee.
I see. Glenn, I apologize. If you can give us an overview, we will email the court out and then post on our social media maybe a couple pictures of what you're talking about doing. And I apologize for not being able to share the screen.
No problem, no problem. In terms of how to do it, it says click the upward arrow to the right of the share screen, then select multiple participants can share.
Yeah, it doesn't have that option.
Does not have that option.
No.
Let's see. Check this one here. There should be an up arrow to the right of share screen.
No, there's not an up arrow, right? Hold on. Okay, you should be able to share your screen.
Says we cannot share screen while
Share
we're
screen.
All right, so
I
turn
just
off your
activated
share.
share screen on it, so you should be able to share your screen on it now.
Okay, so for that to happen, you have to stop sharing your screen. And then I can share mine.
We got it.
I got it. All right, we're good.
License number.
Okay, sorry about that little diversion here. All right, so hopefully you're seeing a map of Washington State. This is an example of the crowdsourcing. This has been in operation within the state for only a couple of weeks, and they've gotten 18,000 tests through in their process. So what you're seeing here, the green areas are good quality service. Yellow is less than 25 meg, red is less than 10 meg, and black is no service. All right, so what we're going to do, just by example, we're going to take a look at a particular county. So this will give you a sense for what's going to happen when we take a look at your county. Over a period of time, we'll start building up the tests for that particular county. And what we're seeing here within this county, which is Stevens County, is we have all the ISPs that have been participating or that are servicing communities throughout this area. And we can take a look by ISP as to where they are and what their service capacity is. And so, for example, if we wanted to single out any particular ISP, we can do that. Or if we want to see where we have no service, we can just highlight that. Those black areas over reports of no service. So this helps us start narrowing down where we're going to start looking for grant application activity. So one of the other things we can start doing as we start collecting more and more data is we can toggle between low quality service and high quality service. And we start seeing very clearly areas where the quality of service is low, or we can look at who is basically no service at all. So that allows us to highlight areas such as in here and in here and in here that we might want to look at more closely for possible grant applications. Now, one of the things we can also do from this viewpoint is we can take a look at an area of interest and we can compare that immediately with the FCC 477 data. So here we're taking a look at a particular block group, and in the speed test we're showing that there's hues and no service, whereas the FCC 477 data says that we've got Desert Wind Wireless, Internet Express, StarTouch broadband, and in this case, StarTouch is literally delivering a 1 gig service. So where we use the FCC data, this area that we've highlighted here is not eligible for a grant. But with the speed test data, we can identify that area as now being eligible. So the purpose of this type of mapping is to identify those areas that we want to focus on and maybe do some design study work on that. All right, so that's kind of a very high overview for what happens when we do the crowdsourcing. Now, in terms of the design studies, I'm going to give you a very simple example. These can get very complex, especially when you're looking at an entire county. But I'm just going to take a township in Minnesota and show you the highlights of what happens when we do a design study. So the first thing we do is we load the design study content in,
And now we start taking a look at what appears to be the available service and opportunities here. So for example, this is Montgomery Township in Minnesota. And what we're seeing here is some various different types of color coding. The green areas here are eligible for federal RDOF money. So if you've got an ISP that's going to be doing an auction, these are places where they can actually do a reverse auction and get paid to implement services. The brown areas are not eligible. All right, the second thing that we start noticing is that where we do not yet have speed test data from our system, we do have speed test data not at the household level, but at the community level. And this is showing who the real ISP providers are in that community based on 12 months of data captured by speed tests from a nonprofit organization called NLAB. So we can see that Frontier's got the balance of the market share at pretty low speeds. And then Mediacom's got some clusters of cable, essentially in downtown Montgomery. And then we start dealing with cell phones as the primary access means after that. So this is an indication that you've got some service issues in the area. And then as the speed test data starts coming in, we can start accumulating that as well. So that's, for example, here we're saying that we've got some speed tests and we're doing a cell phone down here. And as more data comes in from Minnesota, which just started last week, so see if it's still in yet, we start collecting more data. Now the other things that we want to start looking at are some of the grant eligibility criteria for this particular community. So for example, here we're seeing for USDA Reconnect, the various points that they can get for anything that's sitting in this area. And then also here, these black outlined areas, these are areas that are not eligible for USDA Reconnect funding because another telco or ISP has already claimed them. So the first thing that we generally do with the community is we exclude any areas that are going to be not available for USDA funding. So we just take those out. And then we go back in and see what's left. And what you can see is we've knocked out this area here as ineligible for USDA Reconnect funding. So next what we want to do is we want to find out how many points we can get. Is this a good area for a USDA Reconnect grant? So what we do is we run an analysis based on the Reconnect point system to determine how many points this area could receive if they applied for a grant. So you get 1 point for every 10 farms. You get up to 20 points if you're in an opportunity zone. If you're in a rural area, you can get another 20 points. And then these are the critical infrastructure, education facilities, and pharmacy points here. And for RDOF, these are the block groups that we can have available for reverse auction and the number of households that are available there. So this particular community is not a very good candidate for USDA Reconnect funding, but we can find that out very fast, as you just saw. So when we start focusing on areas within your county, we can identify areas that are good candidates for grants and areas that are not so good candidates for grants. All right, so one of the next things we want to do, once we've identified the area as good for a grant application, then we want to figure out how much it's going to cost to put some kind of network and technology into that community. So everybody wants fiber to the home. And one of the first things we have to basically do is figure out, can we afford to do fiber to the home for everybody? So here we have various cost factors that go into it. These are going to be unique throughout the United States. And we've got some good data coming out of Kentucky right now, so that shouldn't be too difficult. But these are national numbers, and I'll just use these for the time being for figuring out how much a fiber run would cost if we were going to put 100% fiber into this community. So what we can do from that is we can calculate how many miles of fiber we have to run. The green areas are places where we're going to have fiber. The red areas are places where nobody lives. So we're not going to run fiber into the red areas. But we can see immediately that the fiber cost for this particular community is going to be about $2.3 million. We're going to spend another $1.2 million or so on electronics packaging. So we've got a base model here of somewhere around $3.5 to $4 million to do fiber. Now that can be prohibitive for communities. So the next question would be, do we have any cheaper alternatives? So what we can do then is we can start restricting the amount of fiber that we're going to put into the network, and then we'll start designing a much cheaper network in this context. So now what we see is we're only going to put fiber in the high density area of the downtown Montgomery community. And the fiber costs have dropped almost $2 million. So we just got a pretty decent saving by not running fiber everywhere. But for these areas out here, we still have to provide services, so we'll try to put a fixed wireless solution in. And in your part of the world, this is going to be much more difficult because we have to design a lot more carefully because you have beautiful terrain, which is really bad for radio. But what we can do then is we start taking a look at what a fixed wireless solution might look like. So that would very simply recommend that we would have 3 tower locations approximately in these locations. That's going to add another, we'll call it $120,000 to the project. Then we have to see what kind of coverage we're going to get from those towers. And these are defined as 80-foot telephone poles by default on unlicensed spectrum. So with those initial locations, we can get 81% of the balance of the community covered by a quality fixed wireless solution. And then depending upon the terrain characteristics, we can adjust the positions of the tower. We can co-locate on pre-existing towers that may be in the area. Here's an example of a 78-foot tall cell phone tower that we might be able to co-locate on. We can go call American Tower and find out what their rates are. Or we can just put up 80-foot telephone poles and see how we go from there. So we've rearranged our tower locations, and then we can process it again and see if we did anything better, and we got us up to 94% coverage from that. So we keep adjusting these positions until we've got the best possible coverage for the community. And instead of about a $4 million project, we're looking at something significantly less, something about a $1.5 million project. Now we can do a bunch of iterations on this, and we generally do. And when we're done, what we end up with is a spreadsheet that basically talks about the various types of models that we consider. This is one we did for a community called St. Helens, Oregon. And we started off with these various models here called A1 through I9. A1 is 100% fixed wireless, no fiber. Then we add some more fiber, and we add some more fiber, and so on until we've got everybody's got fiber. And down here, we see the installation raw costs of the project, anywhere between $1 million and $5.5 million. Then we sit down with the community and we say, okay, what do you think we should focus on? And in their case, they said we should probably think in terms of a $4 million project. So once we settle on an initial model that we're going to look at, we start looking at the affordability and financeability of the particular project. And what we focus on is the idea that no community is going to do this without some sort of loan unless you're really lucky to get 100% grant. But if there's a loan, you have to pay back the loan. And you have a revenue stream that comes out of the community loan network, and that revenue stream is going to help pay back the loan. In this case, with the initial model, we're going to be bringing in $4 for every dollar we have to pay back over a 20-year term. All right, that's good. That means somebody's going to loan you money because you can pay it back. The second thing, though, as a municipality, generally you're going to have a tax liability potential in case of a default, and that liability per household will be $4.23 a month. So the citizens basically get to take a look at that and decide if they want to take that kind of risk. And if that's an affordable risk to them, then the community's got your back and can move forward. And then finally, we generally don't think communities should become their own ISP, and we have to attract an ISP into the community. And the way to do that is to promise them that they're going to make a lot of money. So that's a 5-year return, internal rate of return for a hypothetical ISP under the model assumptions. Then we can start taking a look at, well, some of the other issues. What's going to be our take rate? Is it really going to be 30% or should it be perhaps 25%? And then can my community afford $62.50 a month for broadband access, or should I drop that by $20 a month? All right, so we make those assumptions where everybody can get broadband now for under $40 a month. We can still pay back the loan. Tax liability hasn't changed, but the ISP is no longer going to make a lot of money. So we have to reduce the amount of money that the ISP is going to have to pay for access to the citizens. Bring that back up. We've got still a 2-to-1 debt service ratio, no tax liability change, and the ISP is going to make a lot of money. Now this thing is grant ready, so we apply for a reconnect grant. And just because they love you guys out there, we're going to give you a 50% grant. Impact on that is no impact on the ISP. Tax liability drops, your debt service ratio is good. So we iterate these with the community until they're satisfied that they can talk to the financing folks, they can talk to the citizens, and then they can talk to the ISPs and make the project really move forward. So at this point, they have enough information to do a grant proposal. And they know in advance that they're going to get enough points to even do such a proposal. So in a nutshell, and it's a lot of information to throw in your path in a short period of time, we give you the basis for getting the crowdsourced information that justifies that you really do need it. We give you content that says, should you apply for a grant? And then if the answer is yes, we give you the cost modeling that allows you to put forth a grant application, be it state, regional, federal, or however it might go. And sometimes we can even give you a model that's a good area where you can just finance it yourself and not even worry about a grant. So that's really fast, kind of what we do. And I guess the questions at this point?
Yes, Glenn, thank you for that. And you know, what I feel like is, and I say this all the time, is my job is to bring information to the court, and then the court can determine the direction we want to go. But you know, without the data that your company could provide, or a company like your company that can provide, we don't really know what we don't know, and we don't have the data that we would need to take to, you know, do our due diligence and be a good steward of our tax dollars and apply for federal dollars. So I really think that the beauty of what you're presenting is that you're going to help us, you know, gather the right type of data and the right information and give us a real picture of Scott County and where we have connectivity and where we don't. And then we can take that information as a court and make a decision on what direction we want to go to try to help our citizens. And of course, we all would love to be able to go forward with federal grant monies, and that's, you know, what we want to do. But make sure I'm correct. You know, in a phone call this morning with Paul, you know, I was prepared this morning to ask the court to consider, you know, and I like to bring everything to the court. I wanted to ask them to consider to hire you all to do this, and I think what I understood your rate was for the crowdsourced mapping was $5,000. But Paul shared in a phone call this morning that you all had been in conversations with Hilda Legg, and that you had agreed that the first county in Kentucky that would step up, that you all would actually do this sort of as a pilot and do it for free. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So that is fantastic information to present to the court, and I'm excited about it. Now, I'm going to stop talking for a second, and I'm going to let any of our court members ask you all any questions.
I had one question. I'll let Dwayne go.
Go ahead, Dwayne.
Have you guys done this, you know, to its final stages with anybody yet, as far as start with this, you had all the information, either they went the grant route or the local folks and the ISPs themselves, whatever combination you went through, and then you ended up on the back end and everybody's happy, or you're complete with the project. And if you have,
Yeah.
what kind of timeline are we looking at?
Well, we've done a number of these things, soup to nuts. The most active communities right now are tribal communities in the United States, and we've seen implementations from the time we do the study to the time they're on air at about a 2-month time frame. Now, that's pretty darn fast, but if it weren't for COVID, it'd be more like a year and a half. But what we've seen is that this holds up pretty well. The modeling that we do with the actual ground truthing, actually building the equipment. We haven't seen much of a deviation between our models and the actual cost. A lot of this hinges on the urgency for the community. Under COVID terms these days, there's a lot of urgent communities. And just for your information, if Scott does a design study with us, we've already got 9 other Kentucky counties in the queue right now. So we're going to know your state pretty darn well pretty soon.
So let me follow up on that. You know, we have applied for a grant with the Kentucky Ag Policy Board, and you know, you all have given them a quote, the Bluegrass ad, a quote of doing Woodford, Scott, and Bourbon. And that's part of that grant of doing that rapid design study. And we're waiting on Woodford County to approve the participation from the Ag Extension Board. And then they could, I think then the Bluegrass ad would be the body that authorized that the study go. But, you know, we're waiting on that, and you know, the court's already approved that participation. So, you know,
I have a,
go ahead, Glenn. Glenn?
Tell me the number again, you can write it down, by asking, 59410.
Is that, that's Karen, isn't it? Karen, you need to mute. Karen, this is why we need a tech director. Sorry, everybody. Hey, Karen. Karen, you need to mute. Karen Hankins.
Hello.
Paul or Glenn, I'm sorry. Can you all hear me now?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Glenn, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead, Glenn. Okay. Chad, did you have a question?
Yeah, my question, Glenn, is in terms of the federal grants, I believe FCC defines broadband service as 25 megabits download per second. And here in,
3 up.
here in, do what?
25 down, 3 up.
Yeah, that's correct. And so when we looked at these federal grants before, I believe some of the grants were for areas that have no service at all. The complaints that I get are about the speed. The FCC will say, hey, is he writing something out here? Oh.
I think maybe he needs to be let back into the meeting.
Will you go down there and ask Karen to let Glenn back in? And Jared's doing it. Thanks.
So I guess he didn't do anything.
You all,
You may go ahead and finish my question so
Yeah.
you all know. So the question I've got, when we looked at this grant before, the question is we'll be eligible for the grant is there a part of the grant says that if you're under a certain speed, then you're eligible for the money? And I was wondering if they would know that answer. And you can ask that if you want, Chuck.
yeah, I will. But the beauty of this is they're going to give us the data, and they're going to give us the real information. Then they're going to be able to give us an estimate to make decisions on what path we want to go. And, you know, the quickest path would be to put an RFP out once we get the information and us just pay for it. But, you know, we want, in my mind, we have to look at all options, and we have to look at, are there any federal dollars available? Now, one thing that has came across to me, and I've had conversations with Madison County with, and with Bluegrass Ad folks, is that, you know, can we potentially use our CARES Act funds that are reimbursed? You know, we're eligible for $1.9 million. And could we use a portion of that towards broadband? And from the feedback that I have received, and I'm not going to do anything without having it in writing, but the feedback I have received is yes, we could use a portion of that. And that would be up to the court. But I'm trying to look at all options to give you all information to present. And Glenn and Paul, are you all on there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, Chad Wallace, one of our magistrates, asked, you know, issues that have happened in the past when this type of discussions came up is, you know, you've got certain areas where the federal government defines broadband as 25 down and 3 up. Chad, you want to ask that, you know,
Yeah, when we looked at the federal grants before, the federal grants were mostly for areas that were unserved. And my question is would there be areas that are eligible for federal grant grant monies in terms of if they're under the FCC definition of what is broadband? And then the second part of that is outside of the speeds, we've got some areas, for example, I am limited on the amount of data I can use per month. How do I fit into that equation as far as in terms of the grant application? How do you all take that into consideration when looking at possible federal monies?
All right, for the immediacy of what's going to happen this year, nobody's clear on the CARES distributions, although a lot of states are going on the assumption they can apply that money pretty much at their discretion towards broadband to some degree. So that's an issue that has to shake out. If that's the case, then it's more of a state or local decision as to the areas that need to be served or serviced. In terms of reconnect from the USDA, there's another round coming. There was an additional $100 million allocated to that, and that will be coming out in roughly the September-October timeframe. If the rules are the same as last time, then it's pretty straightforward application. We also know that the Reconnect Reconnect applicants have successfully challenged the FCC data and been approved and received grants. So this crowdsourcing aspect is going to be pretty important since from the FCC data, all of Kentucky is in great shape. And we need to demonstrate that's not true.
So let me ask you this, Glenn and Paul. You know, we've got, and please, any court member help me. You know, we probably have close to 60,000 people that live in Scott County. David, is it 30,000 or thereabouts that live in Georgetown proper?
A little more.
A little bit more. How many responses do we need to set a goal of on your crowdsourcing campaign that would really help us impact, you know, our ability to apply for those federal grants that might come out in September, like the USDA Reconnect? You know, how many do you think we need to set as a goal? And then David Livingston has a question.
Well, and how many need to be
In the rules.
outside the city limits and just in the county?
Yeah, I'm trying to get a picture of the county right now so I can answer that question. You know your county and I don't, so allow me to just do it from a raw data point of view here.
You need faster internet.
Okay, so what you're seeing here is you've got about 20,000 households here. And from the speed test data we've already accumulated, this is obviously an area in need. That's an area in need, and then you've got a large community in here. And I don't know what that community is. You probably know it by heart. But,
Well, that's Georgetown.
area.
What I feel like is,
Ignore Georgetown pretty much completely because that's got good charter and AT&T services there. So what that takes out is probably about, I don't know the population of Georgetown as I can find it, but that's an area where you really don't care about sampling. So what you would want to do is, do you know the population of Georgetown offhand?
About 35,000.
35,000? Okay, so we're bringing this down to about 12,000 people that we need samples from. That's probably about 4,000 households. So to do a really solid one, we'd want about a third, 1/6 to 1/3 of 4,000 to get speed tested. And that should be relatively doable. Now, you can also do Georgetown area as well, because that'll help you identify pockets of opportunity zones within the community. Outside of Georgetown, we're probably looking at somewhere around 1,000 to 2,000 tests total that we would want to try to achieve.
so if we did a donut, and it's a funky looking donut outside of Georgetown, if we could get 1,500 to 2,000 responses, we'd be helping our cause.
Yes, that would be statistically very, very valid.
Okay.
that type of count.
So you said there were 20,000 households in Scott County. Are you able to break down how many households are in, never mind, you're working on it.
So here's the question.
Just included.
As you're doing that, you know, our kids are going back to school virtually, and we hope and pray that things change to where we can get back in the classroom in you know, sometime early October. That's our hope and prayer. We hope that things get better, but you know, we need it now, and we need connectivity as soon as we could get it. But we got to do it wise, and we can't rush in blindly. But you know, we're waiting on Woodford County to approve this, and once Woodford County approves, and they, you know, then we can move forward with the rapid design. But you know, can we go forward, you know, today, starting the process of doing the crowdsource mapping, and then you know, that would be gathering the data, and hopefully within, you know, a week to 10 days we could get, you know, the 1,500 to 2,000 responses that we want to, and then we could go forward with, once we have that and you have that really good data, you know, hopefully Woodford County will have it approved by then, and then you could do the actual rapid design study and give us the information back. And you know, we've already approved that, you know, through the grant application. So could we start the crowdsourcing today, and what do you need from us?
No, but you can start it tomorrow.
Okay.
We
Well-
don't need anything else from you.
Okay. Okay. Here we have one question from Stacy Hamilton. You know, on her road, and I don't, where she lives is in a rural part of Scott County. It's Anderson Road. They have some, and I would bet to say that it's dial-up, DSL. I mean, it's DSL, and there's some availability. It's definitely not high speed. I wouldn't call it, but you know, their opportunities are maxed out because they don't have any more availability for they're capped out. You know, those people that are in that kind of situation, that can the crowdsource mapping can catch that information as well, and give us a good picture of that as well. Correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
I'll just say one thing, Judge. The reason why we're even having this discussion is because AT&T and Spectrum have not been able to service our citizens, and that's the reality, and why we're even having this discussion.
In the rural part of our communities, I think we really have a challenge. Now, AT&T has built a few additional towers to provide DSL. I'm sorry, to provide direct wireless to folks in the rural parts of our community. You know, Spectrum, you know, they provide service in downtown Stamping Ground. But they, you know, what I found so frustrating is that service runs by people's homes, and they can't get connected, and it drives me nuts, and it drives them nuts too. And then they reach out to me, and they're frustrated. And you know, I think our job is to try to help and facilitate and do it. And I think the first step is to do this crowdsource and then get this rapid design done, and then the court can make decision on how to go from there. But we want, now one question I wanted to ask is, I've been in conversations with a couple of folks, a couple companies that are promoting and presenting a solution of a private LTE network, and essentially the fiscal court would help construct with capital the private LTE, and then there would be the private side of it would be they would manage the network, and then there would be another company that would do the customer service aspect of it, and we would see a return on our investment through monthly subscription fees, and that would be basically how it would fit. You emailed me back when I asked that question on email, and I have provided the questions that you gave me to the company so they could give us some feedback, because I don't want to leave anything off the table. You know, have you all worked with any providers that did a private LTE network?
There's a large number of public-private partnerships that have occurred in exactly the same model that you're talking about. The LTE technology is very, very good technology. It's more expensive than the unlicensed technologies, but it's the backbone of almost all 4G phone services throughout the country. When you apply it specifically to a broadband network, it's got advantages. It can go through trees. It can sort of bounce over some hills. In this context, with your terrain, an LTE solution could be one of the better wireless solutions possible.
Very.
The upfront costs on the hardware are going to be higher, but in my opinion, if you've got a vendor who can produce that type of technology in this area, that would probably be, in this terrain, that would probably be your best choice.
What's been presented to me is that it'd be more faster and more reliable than direct wireless.
Not necessarily faster or more reliable, but it's going to have much better coverage.
Okay, maybe that's the best way to say it. All right, Bill Burke has a question, Paul. Bill?
Hi, Judge. You know, in looking at this entire project, what is our goal? Is our goal 90% coverage of the county? Is it 80% coverage or 75% coverage?
Hey, Bill, that is a great question, and I think Paul and Glenn can tell us options. If we want to try, if we said, okay, we want 100% coverage using this approach, Paul and Glenn can give us a really good estimate of how much it would cost. That we can then back it down to 90%, and they could give us an estimate. I think we have to get the data, and then we need to look at the cost estimates, and then we decide how to go forward. That's a great question, Bill.
You know, we keep talking about broadband in the northern part of the county, and certainly, I live in Kingwood. I've got AT&T. I've got more people knocking on my door than Paramount's got pickles trying to sell me broadband. But you go to the other side of that stone wall, over there on a high school, or you go down to the Great Crossings, and a half a mile on Highway 227, and they have nothing. It just boggles the mind how we can just slam the door open.
And
Again, my question is, you know, we need to establish what it is we're looking for. What do we consider success? And, you know, in the real world, 10 megabit upload or 10 megabit download and 2-3 megabit upload is probably high speed. And we're not going to be streaming TV on it a lot, but it certainly gets your homework done.
well, I would like Paul or Glenn. Am I correct in what I stated? Could you expand on Mr. Burke's question about estimates based on percentage of coverage?
Yes, that's one of the parameters you can set before we start the study. The only cautionary I'll give you is that going for 100% coverage is often the most expensive of all possible options. Typically, we strive for a minimum of 80% coverage, and then if we can get above that, then we consider it a good day. It's affordable. We can always design for 100%, but the price tag typically can go by a factor of 10.
Woo!
You know, a $4 million project can become a $40 million project.
My next, second part of my question is, what do we need to do financially? What do we need to invest to move forward on this project? Are we talking $5,000? And if that's the case, that's chump change, and I'll make that motion.
Bill, to do the crowdsourcing, it was going to be $5,000, but Geo Partners LLC, Glenn and Paul, are actually going to offer this to us free of charge right now. What I want to do is, you know, we've agreed to be a part of that. We've agreed to be a part of that grant, but that would pay for our rapid design study with Woodford and Bourbon. But I'll be honest with you, time is of the essence, and I struggle right now waiting on that to push the button for them to go forward, because as they said earlier, they've got 8 or 9 other counties in the queue. Is that correct, Paul and Glenn?
Yes.
You know, I want to check today with Woodford County and just ask if they even have a date set for the meeting. But if we hired you all, you know, the quote that you all gave Bluegrass Ad.
For free? Is that what you said?
No. The quote that you all gave Chip Clark, I had right here. Yes. You know, y'all charge by how many houses you pass, and then there's a blanket fee. I think the households that you know, we took Georgetown out of the picture because we were trying to save money, and that was part of the rationale. But because we felt like the city of Georgetown had pretty good connectivity, and we were really focusing on outside. But the households that you put in the grant quote was 7,746 households. David Livingston has a question. I'll let him add.
Because Bill brought up like the Great Crossing and over there, how far do the city limits expand? You know, are we missing houses if we don't
Do the whole shebang?
Can you do it by make the boundaries by road or by whatever to be able to pick up some of those others that may have been annexed that don't have the...
Yes. If Glenn and Paul, if we took the grant off the table and we weren't even talking about the grant, and we were just wanting to negotiate a price for you to do the rapid design study for all of Scott County, including the city of Georgetown, you know, that's going to up the price because the number of households. But, you know, you all could give us a price for that, correct?
Glenn, you want to answer that? Did we lose Glenn?
No, just went silent for a moment. I don't think I heard the last part of the question.
You know, like, I have a sense of urgency about trying to move this project along, and I'm going to check with Woodford County today to see exactly when they have the meeting. But I think what Magistrate Livingston is trying to wrap his head around as well is that we might need to add the city of Georgetown into our study. Is that what you're thinking, David?
Well, I'm just wondering if there are households that we miss that are within the city limits but don't have access. I don't, like the Great Crossing, I don't know how far that extends out to the city limits. And
Yeah.
what's the brown part of the map that we're looking at right now, or green, whatever color you want to
All
call it?
right, brown part is we've excluded the city limits as defined by the Bureau of Census. So the areas inside here would not be included in the study. We can refine this. We can
All those
add
areas
in
in
block
this.
groups. We can remove them. It's something that, as part of a study, we first of all have to agree as to what areas included or excluded.
Let me ask you this.
Do that process with you.
Glenn, could you and I and Paul, you know, could you give me that, you know, could we meet later and look at that a little closer, at maybe including some of that, but not all of it, maybe including a few of them, and we could kind of cherry pick where we thought we might need to get a better picture from, and then we could look at a price estimate. And, you know, as the executive, I can authorize expenditures, and I think the court would support it. I think that's what we need to do. I think we need to look closer and try to decide exactly which areas we want to include that are in the green, and then we could go from there to try to move this along. But I think the court would like to go forward with the crowdsourcing mapping campaign, you know, as soon as possible. what other questions does anybody else have? And Bill, did your question get answered? Okay. Anyone else have any questions? So, Paul and Glenn, I'll reach out to you after the meeting to try to, execute any agreement we would have to sign to do the crowdsource mapping. And then we'll talk more about, I'll try to get a date when Woodford County's meeting, and then we'll try to maybe look very closely at the green areas that you're showing us to make sure we don't leave anything out. And I think David has another question.
Is there a way to get a screenshot of that map?
Could you, Glenn, could you screenshot that and digitally send that to us so I could share with the court, and then the court could review it and give me feedback as well?
Yes, it's highly accurate. I'm looking at my street in Kaywood,
Well-
Brown area, and I've got AT&T and Spectrum and Verizon and Metronet, 2 or 3 others not gonna
That's why I want a screenshot of it so we can compare it to our maps over at P&Z.
All right. So if you do that, Glenn, and
Without indicating areas of a good service, we can use your map instead of the census map,
okay,
and use that as well.
okay,
The process is fairly easy. We can add or delete areas pretty simply.
okay,
So for example, if I need to take out some more block groups in here, then I can just basically, this is why I'm saying that the process is interactive. So if I want this area excluded, then I can just take it out and delete the blocks. And if I want something included, I can add blocks back in.
okay,
So, for example, it's a very easy process. It's just something that we have to do to get it.
okay. Well,
And then once we've done all that, then we know the area, and then we know the final how to proceed.
okay. Well, we really appreciate your time, and we look forward to getting started on this. And if you would go ahead and send me what we need to do or what I need to do to sign to move forward with the crowdsourced mapping campaign, and get that started, as early as early next week, that'd be great. And then I'll get back with you after I share your information that, the screenshot that you send about information about the rapid design study. And of course, we probably need to wait. We got a little time because we need to get 1,500 responses, 1,500 to 2,000 responses on that crowd mapping to really get the best data, I think. So I might be putting the cart before the horse anyway. So I can't tell you how much I appreciate your time, and I'm excited about the prospects. So thank you, Glenn and Paul, and you all can sign off unless there's any other questions.
But Judge Covington, thank you for your time this morning, and thank you everyone for participating, and we look forward to next steps.
Thank you so much. Have a great day. Karen, if you can go back to the gallery view or speaker view, and Jared, or could you she might have to have a little prompting to do that. She's maybe not hearing us. If you could do that for me. So with that said, I think we're going to move to number 13 in our agenda. That's the sheriff's 2019 tax statement, and I believe Mr. Marshall has that data.
Do I?
I think everybody has it, we just need a motion to.
Okay, I'm sorry,
acknowledge
Stacy.
receipt.
This has been presented to you. Are there any questions in that related to that sheriff's 2019 tax statement?
Do we need a motion, Judge?
We need a motion to approve that as presented.
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Hostetler. And is there a second?
Second.
Second for Mr. Corman. Any other questions or comments? 2019 local tax settlement presentation. If not, all those in favor in accepting that as presented and approving it as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you all very much. Moving down, EMS bank signature change. With our new director, Mr. Chris Runyon, we need to change that authorization signature. And that would read as the minutes needing to reflect that, taking Brandon Rimley off of all accounts as a signer and adding Christopher Runyon as a new signer. They will stay the same otherwise, with myself, Chris Runyon, and Tanya Glass as signers, and it always requires 2 signatures as well. Is there a motion to approve that? Motion from Mr. Corman, a second from Mr. Lyons. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Chris. They've got great faith in you. Number 15, first reading of a summary on ordinance for 20-04 home incarceration program. We talked at length and presented information related to that last week at our workshop, and I'll turn it over to Rand.
Ordinance number 20-04, ordinance establishing a home incarceration program for the Scott County Detention Center. Whereas persistent overcrowding has become a problem for the Scott County Detention Center, and whereas it would be beneficial to both the detention center and its inmates to establish a home incarceration program that would remove inmates from the detention center but still provide a monitored environment for them. And whereas KRS 67372 authorizes the fiscal court to create a home incarceration program by ordinance, whereas the Scott County Fiscal Court has determined that creating a home incarceration program is in the best interest of the citizens of Scott County. Now, therefore, it is ordained by the Scott County Fiscal Court as follows. Section 1. An home incarceration program is hereby created pursuant to KRS 67372. As required by state statute, the Scott County Detention Center is the agency designated to monitor the home incarceration program. Section 2, the county shall enter into a contract with an appropriate entity to operate the HIP. Said contract shall be reviewed at least annually. Section 3, the county shall pay the expense of the operation of the program for qualified inmates, which shall be designated as a line item on the Scott County Detention Center budget. The Scott County Detention Center is also hereby designated as the agency to operate the program on a continuous basis, 24 hours per day and 7 days per week. This shall be in conjunction with a third-party contractor who should carry out the day-to-day operations of the program. The Scott County Detention Center is authorized to formulate the policies and procedures necessary to operate the program as provided by the Kentucky Revised Statutes and this ordinance. Section 4. Pursuant to KRS 67372 sub 2, the fiscal court designates the Scott County Sheriff's Office as a law enforcement agency to assist a petitioner, victim, or witness when a person ordered to wear a monitoring device violates the provisions of the court's order and is in need of assistance. Section 5. Participants in the program shall be limited to the following. Persons not charged with any violent or sexual offense. Violent, as used in this ordinance, shall be a crime in which physical injury was inflicted or threatened. 2. Persons not charged with violating an EPO or DVO. 3. Persons who are not convicted or charged with being a PFO. 4. Persons not charged with an FTA or having 2 or more FTA convictions in the 2 years immediately preceding the current charge. 5. Persons not having a similar charge within 2 years immediately preceding the current charge. 6. Persons not charged with a felony drug trafficking offense. 7. Persons not charged with escape or convicted of escape. 8. Persons who have not previously violated a home incarceration program order in this or any other state. Section 6, participants must have a home to live in located in Kentucky. The participant must not have a current no trespass order with respect to said home. Additionally, no victim of the pending crime may reside either full or part-time in the same home. Section 8, participants in the program shall reimburse the county for the cost of participating in the program according to their ability to do so as determined by the presiding judge. Said reimbursement may be in full, on a sliding scale, that is partially or nothing. However, persons with private counsel or who are not indigent are not eligible to have the county pay for their home incarceration. First reading approved today, August 14th, 2020, assuming you do. You know, I forgot, I don't think this is a substantial change, but I think it's a problem. We talked last time about spelling out, what's an EPO, DBO, PFO, and FTA. An EPO is an emergency protective order. A DVO is a domestic violence order. A PFO is a persistent felony offender. And then FTA is a failure to appear, not coming to court. So next time, on the second reading, I'll fill that in. Again, I don't think that's a material change, so we can have a second reading next time.
Any questions or comments or anything related to this first reading? No questions or comments?
Can I make a quick comment, Judge?
Yes, sir. I was about to hit the gavel.
As much as I appreciate the work that me and Rand and you, Judge, have done, I still want, for the record, I'm opposed to it being a statewide location for this individual to be incarcerated at. State law says that as the county jailer, I'm still charged with supervision of these individuals. It's going to be kind of tough, or at least it's going to impede it in some circumstances if they're all the way out in Paducah. I just want that on the record. Everything else sounds good about the ordinance to me.
We have, we've gone through about 4 or 5
Oh, yeah. at least.
drafts, and I certainly respect your concern about that. I felt like you were okay with going forward with that. I know you're just voicing your concern.
That's all I'm doing.
But at the same time, we spoke about, I think CCA's done exactly what they've said they were going to do. I do want to mention that we want to amend our contract with CCA only to spell out that if someone absconds or violates terms, that they should immediately notify the jail, and then the jail will take it from there, notifying sheriff, GPD, state police, whoever it might be. CCA's expressed to me that they can monitor the terms of the person's home incarceration from Paducah, and I understand it's not the best situation, but hopefully we don't have very many of those, and I respect you wanting to put that on the record. If we find ourselves having problems with it, we certainly can bring it back and amend, or ask the court to consider amending. So thank you for that comment. I'm just glad that we've got to this point and can put this in the bed and let it go to work. So I appreciate you coming up. Any other questions or comments? Motion to approve from Mr. Lyons. Is there a second? I have a second from Mr. Livingston. Any other questions or comments on the first reading? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, we'll move down to Ordinance 20-06, first reading, amend 0405 to cover due process policy and rolling conformity provisions regarding licensed taxes. And Rand has this.
Ordinance 20-06, an ordinance amending ordinance number 0405 for the collection of occupational license taxes. Whereas the Scott County Fiscal Court has previously adopted an ordinance providing for the collection of occupational taxes, whereas it's become necessary to amend said ordinance to provide for consistency with current Internal Revenue Code and to provide for an appeals process, now therefore be it ordained by the Scott County Fiscal Court as follows. Section 1. A new article, Article 23, entitled Appeals, shall be added to the existing ordinance providing for the collection of occupational license taxes. The text of Article 23 amendment is as follows. Appeals. 1. A licensee shall have the right to appeal eligible decisions of the Revenue Commission within 30 days by A, sending a written notice including sufficient documentation to support the appeal to the Director of the Commission, or B, submitting a written request for a meeting with the Director of the Commission to explain his or her appeal and present evidence. C, after reviewing documentation or hearing the licensee, the Director of the Commission shall in writing affirm, modify, or withdraw the decision. 2, a licensee shall have the right to appeal a decision of the Director made under subsection 1 of this section within 30 days by submitting a written request for a meeting with the Board of Commissioners to explain his or her appeal and present evidence. After reviewing documentation and or hearing the licensee, The Board of Commissioners shall, in writing, affirm, modify, or reverse the assessment, but only upon a showing that the director's decision was not supported by substantial evidence on the record. 3, eligible decisions subject to appeal under this section shall be limited to: A, audit findings or an additional assessment under KRS 67-775. B, apportionment factor used for calculating tax liability. C, questions as to nexus in the jurisdiction. D, other factors related to the assessment/calculation of tax liability. 4, an appeal shall serve to stay the collections process, during which time the commission shall not take any adverse actions against the taxpayer or commence civil litigation. After the appeals process is final, the stay shall immediately expire. Section 2, the definition of, quote, internal revenue code as set out in Article 1, subsection 9 is hereby deleted in full and replaced with the following definition. Sub 9, Internal Revenue Code, means the Internal Revenue Code in effect on December 31st of the year in which the tax is due, exclusive of any amendments made subsequent to that date, other than amendments that extend provisions in effect on December 31st of the year in which the tax is due that would otherwise terminate. Section 3 of this ordinance shall become effective upon its passage and publication as required by law. First reading today, August 17th, should be 14th, 2020.
Any questions or comments related to that information?
Judge, I have a question. So if there is a question, they appeal it to the Director of Revenue, correct? Generally speaking, when we do appeals of some type of determination, it's done in front of a group. For example, if you want to appeal your tax assessment, you do it in front of a group or an appeals board, code enforcement. Why are we doing it, setting this up where there's only one person can make?
Does it not say the Revenue Commission?
Well, yeah, it would start with the commissioner, but if they don't like that, then they have the right to take it to the Board of Commissioners.
Okay, all right, that's fine.
Any other questions or comments?
Just one other thing on that second, there is the appeal that goes to the commissioners. It says they can affirm, modify, or reverse the assessment, but only on showing the director's decision was not supported. But if they affirm it, they don't need to show that it's not supported. I need a little clarification. If they modify.
What if we say, but reversal can only be made upon a showing?
Modification or reversal.
Okay.
Would have to be supported, but if it's affirmed, it does need to be supported.
And that's a minor revision that we can fix between now and then.
Yeah.
But I agree with you, Al. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Did we get first and second?
Did I not get it first and second? David, thank you for keeping me in the direction.
I was just worried I missed something.
No,
I zone out every now and then.
I'm trying to move us along out of respect for your all's time. Do we have a first? Is there a motion to approve? Mr. Lyons approves. Is there a second for Mr. Livingston? Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you for keeping us legal. Yes, legal. All right. We have to do a resolution related to where we had allowed Anderson Properties essentially to help construct a turnabout, a cul-de-sac, whatever you want to call it, inside the boundary of the Lyle Road Soccer Complex, and they'll be connected to Schoolhouse Road. The concern is that since that becomes a public road, we have to affirm that we will never try to gate that off. Now, if we ever build a parking lot off of that cul-de-sac turnabout, we could gate that off, but we cannot gate the public road off. Does that make sense? And is that what you have?
I think that's the gist of it, yes, sir.
Yeah, and Kim, you've been sitting here, and do you have anything you would like to add to the court? You think this will be a big plus potentially for that soccer complex?
Absolutely. This roundabout will provide multi-use, not just an emergency turnaround for the communities that are adjacent to it, but it also for dropping and picking up kids for soccer, and it'll also be adjacent to our potential concessions building. So I think this is a huge plus.
All right.
They're a good partner for doing this with us.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Any questions or comments? I'll let Rand read the resolution.
Resolution 20-14, a resolution agreeing not to close off Schoolhouse Road. Whereas it is anticipated that Schoolhouse Road will be extended to connect with the road at the Lyle Road Soccer Complex owned by the county. Whereas the city of Georgetown has requested that the fiscal court agree not to place a gate or other obstruction blocking the road off to the soccer complex. Now therefore, it is hereby resolved by the Scott Fiscal Court as follows. Fiscal Court hereby agrees not to close off the road in the Lyle Road Soccer Complex from the Schoolhouse Road extension. The judge executive is hereby authorized to execute any document, including but not limited to a plat, to reflect the county's commitment to keep said road open.
Any other comment or question? Is there a motion to? Motion.
Resolution 2014.
All right, we've got a motion for Mr. Hostetler. Is there a second? Second for Mr. Lyons. Any other question or comment? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Confirm that resolution. At this time, I'd like to ask Joe Broyles to bring to the court request related to detention center SOPs update.
Thanks, Judge. I introduced in the workshop to you all a new restraint device that we have obtained down at the jail. It's a restraint device that's used nationwide. It's used currently in about probably 10 to 15 other jails in the state. Oh, sorry.
Just pull it around to
There
you.
we go.
I'm sorry.
It's used currently in Kentucky, probably in about 10, 15 other jails. It provides us another tool in our tool belt. We do currently have a restraint device down there. It has limitations. This overcomes those limitations and allows us to use it in scenarios that really may not be quite appropriate for the other restraint device. So the SOP change is adding this as a device that we can use down there. It outlines the procedures and the training. And the second SOP that I gave to you all is our use of force SOP, and that essentially covers us using force, which includes restraining somebody. So we had to, if we're adding this device in, we had to have a SOP for this device, but we also had to amend the use of force SOP to add this device into it.
I had one question. I believe in SOP it said that they cannot go unattended.
Correct.
And I don't want to dive too much into this, but I know this is a restraint device. I'm sure that there's times that you all, is that with all your all's restraint policies that you leave on attended versus leaving them by themselves?
Correct. So anytime somebody's restrained, we have to at least be visually monitoring the individual. So if somebody's handcuffed, we don't have to have a one-on-one visual with somebody. A restraint device like this or the restraint chair that we use, it's a lot more restrictive and it can exasperate medical issues if you have them. So it is recommended that you have an actual one-on-one eyes right there with them, observing them while they're restrained in them. So for all of our restraints that we use down at the jail, there is monitoring, constant monitoring of that individual. With this device and with our other restraint device, the restraint chair, there's actually one-on-one right there, eyes on the person.
Yeah, I think it's a great device. I was afraid that it might put extra stress or extra manpower just to deal with that individual with.
Well, and it does. If we can't have a deputy watch the individual, then, and this is not just for this situation, but it's when we have high-risk inmates that require a high watch, and we have to have eyes on them. If we don't have staff available, then we'll use an inmate watcher, somebody that's qualified down there to sit there and watch this individual and log their reactions, log their behavior every 15 minutes.
So would it be sufficient to just say that they have to be monitored and not have a person in attendance per se?
We could do that, but the manufacturer recommends a one-on-one watch, somebody right there with them.
I just don't want to put ourselves in a position where we're like, let's just say that we're low on manpower and we're putting ourselves in a position, in a liable position per se, if something happens and they're going to come back and say, well, this SOP says someone was there supposed to be in attendance, but we actually were having somebody watch from a monitor, and now we're liable. That's just my only concern.
I personally think we would be more liable if we go against the manufacturer's recommendations to have a person there one-on-one with them. And I don't foresee any kind of problems, although we do run into staffing issues every week. Having enough staff, I don't think this would present a problem for us.
Rand, what's your thoughts?
I think he's right. I don't know that I'd want to deviate from the, you know, the instructions, the guidelines. I think you might create more liability instead of less.
Thank you.
And there was a typo on what I sent out to you all. If you all could look at page 2, number 9, the second line of number 9, it's got use of force in parentheses. That needs to be deleted.
Will you email me back what you just said?
Yes.
Change?
Yeah.
What other questions or comments does any court member have related to this request for jailer broils? No questions or motion? We need a motion. Yes, sir.
You got it.
Motion from Mr. Hostetler
To approve with the change.
with the change.
Yep, a second.
Yes.
We have a second from Mr. Livingston. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. Motion passes. Thank you, jailer broils.
Thank you.
Number 19 on our agenda, Health Board tax rate. Board Representative Jared Holland.
Okay, just like to say the tax rate is going to stay the same, 0.044.
No change.
No change.
Any other questions or comments?
And on that, we can vote or not take action, correct? Isn't that the way?
Correct. Take action.
The change, okay.
Yes.
Is there a motion?
Do we need to vote?
And we'll
Just go
Not
with
if
no
we're good
action?
with it.
If y'all are good with it, then let the record reflect.
I just got to state for the record, Judge.
Yes, let the record reflect that that was no change. And if y'all are good with that, then we'll move to number 20. HR intern new hire, and our friend Kara Oliver is here to present this information.
Judge, magistrates, the HR department would like to hire Emily Reedy for an HR intern for the fall and spring season, and she'll be working about 8 hours a week for $8.50 an hour.
Any questions or comments?
Motion.
Motion. Is there a second? Second from Mr. Lyons. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Just to update you all as well on that, little young lady that worked for us last year and has worked through the summer really remotely because she can do it remotely, and it's a bargain for us. She's helped with social media updates and the website. Sandra Bernango, she's a student at Georgetown as well. She's just continued working with us. She's still there, and same thing as the one that will be working in HR. And I think it's awesome that we have this and the connection to Georgetown College. I think it's good stuff. Next, we are in new business now, and there's two items that I want to bring to the table. And one is to announce that we officially received approval yesterday from the state of Kentucky, the Cabinet of Energy and Environment. Our solid waste management plan amendment was approved, and we have a letter of approval. So let the record reflect that is the case. With that said, our counsel, Tom Fitzgerald, recommended that the court consider a resolution today related to that, and Rand has that resolution.
Resolution number 20-15, a resolution in response to a request for a determination of consistency between an expansion of the proposed municipal solid waste landfill and the 2018 through 22 Scott County Area Solid Waste Management Plan. Whereas the Fiscal Court of Scott County is the designated governing body for the implementation and oversight of the Scott County Solid Waste Management Area, the Scott County Area Solid Waste Management Plan received on June 12, 2020, a written request to make a determination of consistency of a notice of intent of Waste Services of Bluegrass to apply for a horizontal expansion of the Central Kentucky landfill located at 493 Double Covert Road, Scott County, Kentucky. Whereas the notice of intent to apply for a horizontal expansion proposes to add 6,334,014 permitted tons of solid waste. Whereas KRS 224-40-315 sub 1 provides in part that no permit to construct or expand a municipal solid waste disposal facility shall be accepted for processing by the cabinet unless the application contains a determination from the governing body for the solid waste management area in which the facility is or will be located concerning the consistency of the application with the area solid waste management plan submitted under KRS 224-43-345 sub 1A to sub D and L until January 1st, 1993, and the entire plan after January 1st, 1993. The governing body for the area shall, within 60 days of receipt of a written request, make the determination after public notice and opportunity for public comment and public hearing. And whereas in accordance with KRS 224-40-315 sub 1, public notice was published notifying the public of the request for a determination consisting of opening a 30-day comment period that closed on August 1st, 2020. Whereas the public notice also invited any interested person to request a hearing on the request for determination consistency. Whereas public comments were received and there was no request received to schedule a public hearing. And whereas on June 25th, 2020, the Fiscal Court of Scott County, in its capacity as governing body for the Scott County Solid Waste Management Area, gave final approval to a revision to the 2018-2022 Scott County Area Solid Waste Management Plan, providing that no capacity beyond that for which a valid and extent determination of consistency has been previously provided shall be available for disposal of in or out of area solid waste within Scott County Solid Waste Management Area. Whereas the Fiscal Court, acting as governing body for the Scott County Solid Waste Management Area, has considered the request for a determination of consistency in light of the 2018 through 22 Scott County Area Solid Waste Management Plan, currently in force and effect, and the public comments received and otherwise being fully advised. Whereas the Fiscal Court of Scott County, acting as a governing body for the solid waste management area, adopted a resolution 20-13 on August 10th, 2020, determining that the proposed horizontal expansion of the existing landfill that would add 6,334,014 additional tons of municipal solid waste is inconsistent with the 2018 through 22 Scott County Area Solid Waste Management Plan, which authorizes no capacity for disposal of solid waste within Scott County Solid Waste Management Area. And whereas on August 12, 2020, the Energy and Environmental Cabinet transmitted a letter from Anthony R. Hinton, the Commissioner of the Department for Environmental Protection and Acting Director of the Division of Waste Management, to the Honorable Joe Pat Covington, Scott County Judge Executive, in response to a request for review and approval of the June 25, 2020 plan revision, noting that the division notes that the plan amendment text on pages 5 and 6 states the county's remaining authorized capacity is equal to the amount of Central Kentucky landfill's remaining capacity under the local determination for its existing permit. The Cabinet recognizes that Scott County's intent is to reduce authorized capacity beyond the current permitted capacity to 0 tons, regardless of the clerical errors noted below on pages 4 and 5 of the plan amendment. Per the amended plan, Scott County is also now relying on waste disposal capacity assurances from Benson Valley Landfill as its primary landfill and 2 landfills operated by Rumpke of Kentucky for its secondary landfills. The division notes that the numerical values for the previously authorized capacity and amount previously disposed totals listed on pages 4 and 5 of the plan amendment are inconsistent with the totals listed in Scott County's current 2018-22 solid waste management plan update. The division requests that the county make this technical correction, which is not material to the authorization or lack thereof of additional capacity. Notwithstanding these clerical errors, the division has approved the submitted plan amendment in accordance with KRS 224.43-345 and 401 KEI 49011. Now therefore be it resolved by the Scott County Fiscal Court as the governing body for the Scott County Solid Waste Management Area hereby ratifies the determination of Resolution 20-13 that the proposed horizontal expansion of the existing landfill that would add 6,334,104. I think I'm
So 14.
It should be 14.
114, okay. 114 additional tons of municipal solid waste is inconsistent with the amended 2018-22 Scott County Area Solid Waste Management Plan, which authorizes no capacity for disposal of solid waste within the Scott County Solid Waste Management Area. This resolution further finds and determines that the proposed horizontal expansion of the existing landfill that would add 334,114 additional tons of municipal solid waste is inconsistent. with the
Yes,
full-
sir.
No, it actually, back up in the document, it says 014.
It is 014.
014, not
Should-
114.
It should be 014.
Okay,
We've had trouble with that.
yeah,
It's
And
014.
it says it
I've
in there a
put it
couple,
10 times.
yeah,
okay.
sorry.
You have that correct
No,
version
thank you, I appreciate that.
on your email, Rand.
I'm sorry?
You have the correct version emailed to you this morning.
Okay.
We worked on it this morning.
All right, that's my fault, yeah, I didn't print that out. So with those amendments, it's 6,334,014.
014, yes. Yes, sir.
014, okay.
Yes, sir.
So let me pick out with this resolution further finds and determines that the proposed horizontal expansion of the existing landfill that would add 6,334,014 additional tons of municipal solid waste is inconsistent with the 2018 to 2022 Scott County Area Solid Waste Management Plan as amended on June 25th, 2020, and approved by the Energy and Environmental Cabinet, which plan authorizes no capacity for disposal of solid waste within the Scott County Solid Waste Management Area. A copy of this resolution shall be transmitted to Council for Waste Services Bluegrass and to the Solid Waste Branch of the Kentucky Energy and Environment Cabinet.
So, any questions or comments? Having the approval letter dictated doing this additional resolution. So the language has changed. Alvin, do you have another change?
Well, it's just, in that next last paragraph there where it says no capacity, it should be no additional capacity because they fill out what they were, their current permit, but they can't do any additional. It just says no capacity. Does that need to be filled out? There's two places in there it says no.
What I believe is that the new plan amendment authorizes no
That relates to the
capacity.
new plan amendment.
That's the new plan amendment. And in that new plan amendment has been approved. And we could not, all we could take action on is beyond the current permitted capacity. So that new plan amendment would take effect once the current capacity is exhausted.
Right. And it's actually our official plan now. But like you
Yeah.
said, we still have to exhaust what's
Yes.
available in this current. But it's actually approved on the 12th. It's our plan right now.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that this is probably already fixed, but I think it's page 2, like paragraph 5, it's just Scott with one T. On a copy that I have.
There was,
Not too bad.
like we said, we made some clerical cleanups, and it's on the official copy.
I don't think that is. I'll look.
But you don't think that one's on there?
No. we didn't.
Page 2, David, we're at,
It's like paragraph 5 or something.
Yeah, the fifth whereas.
yeah, I see it. Any other questions or comments? I'm, would like the record to reflect that, glad that, appreciate the work and effort of Tom Fitzgerald, Jared, and Rand, and really appreciate Tom's guidance and to get us to this point of having the plan amendment approved, and now we can move forward from that point. So I just wanted to make that public statement.
Hey, Judge, also, I want to echo that, and I want to echo your efforts as well. I really appreciate those. And make a motion to approve the resolution.
We have a motion on the floor. Is there any other, we've got a second from Mr. Livingston. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Stacy, after you all sign, can you email it to me? I'll send it on to Waste Services Attorney.
Yeah, we'll have to make the change and then, yeah.
And then can we also send that to Tony Hatton?
Okay, yeah.
I think that'd be appropriate. All right, next, one other new item for new business that was sent to me earlier, we had discussions about it earlier in the week, and Rand had a call from the Madison County County Attorney as well, and then yesterday this request was sent. It is essentially a change amendment to our BRRN, Bluegrass Regional Radio Network Interlocal. And Rand has the email and the language in the section that we need to change. And it was dictated upon direction from what body?
The Attorney General's office.
The Attorney General's office. So that's why we're bringing this to you. And Rand, if you'd read that.
Yeah, and let me read this paragraph that kind of says why we're doing this. The Attorney General's office has reviewed the interlocal. They have suggested one change to Section 13, which is the commitment and termination article. The modification was to clarify that the agreement would auto-renew each year. The language in the previous document was unclear, made it sound as if it was only a 1 year agreement. This was obviously not the intention of our interlocal, so the language needed to be cleaned up to get this signed by the AG and get this finalized. So now here is the actual text of the amended article, which is Article 13, Commitment and Termination. The terms of this agreement shall renew annually unless or until termination by any of the parties. To terminate this agreement by any party, a termination letter must be provided in writing to BRRN committee at least 120 days prior to the desired termination date. In the event of termination by any party, BRRN will provide the user entity with a final invoice for removing equipment assessing the BRRN. The BRRN will not aid in reconfiguring or converting to any new systems.
That's it in a nutshell. And we needed to do that, and needed to do it today. So what questions or comments does anyone have related to that amendment of Section 13 of the interlocal? Any questions or comments?
If I could just say, Judge, in talking to the Madison County Attorney, she thought that we should all be passing an ordinance. I'm not sure why she felt that way, but I told her I would touch base with Rich Ornstein and get his input. I haven't done that yet, I will, but we're approving an agreement. I'm not sure why we would need an ordinance, but I'll double check on that.
Okay. Thank you for that. Is there a motion on the floor to accept the amendment as presented? So we've got a motion from Mr. Wallace. We got a second? Second from Mr. Corman. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. And to my knowledge, I don't have any other new business to bring to the court. Does any court member have any new business or any comments or anything?
I do, Judge. Have you got any kind of an update on the roundabout? Is it close?
Rick, I don't want to jinx us, but there's a really good chance, unless something happens, that the state could open that thing, maybe as soon as today. They are working as we speak on electrical connection to the lights and the signage. I think the signage was installed. So I can't officially say, hey, it's going to be open this afternoon, but I am very optimistic, and I have called and we have made calls this week. I myself tried to reach out and did reach out to staff at Owen Electric, and as well as I'd like to give a shout out to Representative Philip Pratt. He made some phone calls as well, and JR has been working on it, and we appreciate that type of help. We've been trying to get it pushed along because we all understand that it impacts people's lives and people's business. And if we could expedite the opening, that's what we certainly wanted to do. And I'm hopeful and optimistic that this afternoon that people will be driving in circles out that way. And I think it'll be a positive. Alvin Lyons, do you have a question?
Well, just a comment, just as soon as we get confirmation it's open, I'd like for you to post it on any of the social media accounts we have.
You can rest assured, Magistrate Lyons, that we will shout it from the rooftop and post it.
Did you call the news stations as well?
Yes. Yes.
Have a ribbon cutting or something?
No. And you all understand this. When they make a contract, they're going to make a contract, and it's got an end date. And once that's on paper, they can't force that contractor to open it before then. They can't force them. but they can encourage, and I think that's what's happened. I'm glad that.
Any update on concerning that also concerns, all the work I'm getting ready to see on West Main, West Main Street there. If they start working there and they're not finishing that roundabout, we're going to have a few diggers on our hands. Do we know when that's going to start?
Mr. Ellison, I do not know. Does anyone on the court know?
You mean the repaving on West Main, is that what?
Are you talking about the repaving?
Yeah, there's a lot of utility, type of effort going on right now. Looks like they're getting ready to get started over there.
Oh, you're talking about the actual Main Street, East Main, and no, I think they're doing, yeah, I think they're doing, I think that Main Street will be completely repaved, but I think they're still a ways away from getting to that point to start doing that work. They've been doing that utility work and water line work and such. I'm very hopeful, Dwayne, that this afternoon that we'll see traffic at the roundabout, which will relieve traffic in downtown. It's amazing how that impacts downtown Georgetown, and I'll be thankful to see that flowing. But I'll check on that with Kelly Baker. Any other questions or comments related there? And then Stacy just brought up something I intended to write down and I forgot. Our next regularly scheduled meeting is for Thursday. I don't have the date right, but 27th, and it's at 7 o'clock at night. Does the court want to leave it there, or does the court have a desire to change? I don't have any recommendation.
I would not be available during the day on that day.
I say we just leave it there, trying to get back to some normal.
7 o'clock on that Thursday, and we'll go from there. Any other comments?
I do. One
Yes.
other question, back to the last leg. Do they have a deadline on that one? That last phase of the bypass? I know part of it's open, on US 25.
Rick, all I know was that was hope to have it open by late this fall. I will check with Kelly Baker and share that information with the court as well. What we have there.
What made me think about it was you were talking about, they had a contract date, which I know they've got it on final phase 2, so I just wondered if you knew what that was. That's what it's about.
Yeah, and I don't have that, but I'll check and report back. David Livingston, do you have a question, comment?
Well, I was just going to say, they got the final coat down on the J-turn out on the bypass, and while I still prefer the light out there, and I think many of the residents do, we've gotten a lot of good feedback on social media from the Bradford page, because that's who it affects the most, that it looks like it's gonna work out well.
That's good to hear. I appreciate that feedback. Any other question, comments, or business for the court? With that said, is there a motion to adjourn? So moved by Bill Burke, seconded by Mr. Alvin Lyons. Any other questions, comments? All those in favor of adjournment, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned.